I thought you'd already hit it.
Okay, so this show is called The Lowdown with Tony Lowe because that's super witty. And I'm here with a couple of, it doesn't even feel fair to say, like rock musicians or something, but members of a great musical outfit, Beauty Pill, from DC, Erin Nelson and Ryan Nelson.
Yeah.
So the
Current
quick,
former.
Yeah.
exactly. So I'm going to say some stuff, and then I'm hoping you two will interrupt me and fill in the blanks really fast. So Erin is singer, dancer. Is it fair to say choreographer?
It's more fair to say choreographer now than dancer. I don't dance as much as I choreograph anymore. So yeah.
Well, you must be an incredible choreographer, judging from the video that you all just put out, because there's some dancing going down.
Thank you.
So dancer, choreographer, Erin Nelson, and you do a lot of your work, Erin, with am I saying it right? The Taffety Punk Theatre?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm one of the co-founders of Taffety Punk here in Washington, D.C. With Mark Nelson, aka Marcus Kidd.
Okay.
So yeah, I work primarily with them right now. Yeah.
And Mark is my brother. Just full disclosure. So
even more incestuous.
It's all incestuous, right?
I think this is, by the time we're done, going to be the most incestuous. It's basically DC 0 degrees of separation, just 100% united.
That's true.
Okay, let's see if I get everything else. Okay, right now, singer of Beauty Pill is probably the most pertinent, or
yeah, sure.
If we had to, get all identity about it, your identity is what? You're a choreographer, probably first.
My identity is Erin Nelson. But most relevant to what's going on right here and now. Beauty Pill just put out an EP, which I'm singing on. So that would be the most current relevant thing. Taffety Punk, unfortunately, because of COVID and whatnot, everything, our entire season has been, come to a screeching halt. We will resume when we can figure out how to sell enough tickets to social distance an audience.
Right.
So like that's a very real thing that's impacting our company right now. Yeah.
And the record, it's an EP. Yeah. Would it be fair to say, is on Bandcamp right now?
It's on Bandcamp. It's for sale through Bandcamp and for sale through Northern Spy Records, which is our current label.
That's great.
Yeah. Excited about it.
And Ryan Nelson has been in every single band.
That's
basically.
That's it. Yeah. I just don't say no to projects.
Yeah. So right now, Beauty Pill. And also
no, not Beauty Pill.
No,
not Beauty Pill.
No. I'm so sorry. Right now, soccer team.
Yeah.
Former of Beauty Pill.
Yeah.
But current spouse of Erin from Beauty Pill.
That's right. Yeah.
So
just make it super complicated. Yeah.
I know. I want it. So this is, this goes in the liner notes of your every record. This whole thing.
No, I quit Beauty Pill a lot of years ago. Like a lot of years ago, and I stayed close. Chad and I stayed close, and it was probably a little rough at first, but not that rough. Like after when I left. In fact, like when I quit, we had a long conversation, and we were working on new stuff, and he even in that conversation he was like, "There's this one song that you wrote, that you're the impetus for this song." He's like, "I don't want to lose that song when you leave." And I was just like, you should have it. Like, you should, do you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like a knockdown drag out fight. Like the way that I left Beauty Pill was like, I told Chad, I said we could be in this thing for a long time and make really great music, but be really bitter business partners, or we could be friends like we always were. And I'm way more interested in having my friends, so I left.
Well, it did work because Chad, who, by the way, for anyone who is watching this video doesn't know, is kind of would you say he's the resident Beauty Pill composer? Or, yeah, I mean, he is a very talented musical mastermind who also masters records, very talented and prolific, I would say. Prolific in depth, at least.
Chad's really, he's so like the way, like I'm sure other people would say other things about working with Chad. Everybody has a million stories about Chad, but
I have a fun one, but go ahead.
But his like collaborating with him, like when I was in the band, like it was more about like the collaboration and other people having a voice and everything like that. So if I had song ideas, Chad never said no to those ideas or anything like that. And even going back to the first iteration of Beauty Pill, before I was even in the band, it's like somebody would, and this is how it always is, like playing with Chad. You play 3 notes on a guitar, and Chad starts going like this, and then he starts cascading with ideas. Do you know what I mean? So so the germ of the idea could be from somebody who isn't Chad, or like most of the time it starts with Chad for sure, because he's the main singer-songwriter in the group. But like in the practice space, if you brought, like, it could be 2 notes, it could be 3 notes, it could be, you know what I mean? Once that thing hits, he's like, oh, do it again, and then he's lost, and then you're like, hours later you're into this winding thing, and it's, that's the greatest part of the collaboration. A lot of times, like I remember in Beauty Pill, there'd be days where it was just me and Boschla and Chad, like I'd play guitar and Boschla played bass and Chad played guitar, and it was just the 3 of us, and Boschla and I are just sort of holding down the rhythm, and Chad is just going all over the place with with the guitar. But really what he's doing is he's finding all these other melodies that some of them become vocal lines.
Yeah.
They don't even end up as guitar lines anymore or overdubs. They become vocal melodies and things like that. So, it was really good. And my collaboration, not to hold the floor for so long, but my collaboration came from, I would write a riff, and I would write songs and demo these things all the time. And Chad was enthusiastic about all of it. And I did, Chad would always do vocal melodies.
Yeah.
And then when a couple of times when we got stuck, or for various reasons, like Chad is definitely a talented lyricist, but there were a couple moments where I wrote lyrics as well when I was in the band. And again, Chad was really supportive about that too. So it's, it was a lot of collaboration over the years. It has become, Beauty Pill has changed over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, I think there's been like 4 whole bands. I would say. Like 4 chapters of Beauty Pill. Yeah,
and like the studio work is a real mess because, like starting with the first EP, the Cigarette Girl EP, like Beauty Pill has always brought in additional musicians. Like somebody played timpani on the first EP. He's had people come in and play harp on things. We had a song called Western Prayer. I think Joe Wong, I don't know if you listen to Joe Wong's podcast, but he played percussion just because he was hanging out in the studio, and he's a great drummer.
I don't listen, but I will now.
Yeah, he does a podcast called the Trap Set.
Oh no, then I have. Yeah.
Joe,
yes.
He's an old friend.
Yeah, he goes deep, man, with everybody.
Yeah,
not just drums.
Yeah, I met him really early on. I think he might have been in high school when I met him. I was in a band called The Most Secret Method.
Yeah, that's where we got off track. I was doing let's go through them then. So most secret, but don't lean on me, but most secret method,
Yeah.
right? And then, okay, at some point, and I don't understand how this happens, because you're a DC, you've always been DC, right? Folk based, except you had the band in, am I right? Kalamazoo, Michigan,
Yeah.
which is a way cooler town than anyone thinks.
I'm glad you know.
Well, I know because my hometown, although I spent the last 10 years in California, I'm back in my Northwest Ohio area.
Yeah.
And, you know, what are you going to do except go to Kalamazoo sometime? And I'm a vintage guitar nut. So that's the home of Gibson, man. That's the home of all those great things.
Right. Yeah, Kalamazoo was a so like on tour it was a like, depending, I mean, because I toured with a bunch of different bands, and I did a bunch, like I was lucky to tour as much as I did. And this isn't a bragging right, it's not like we made a bunch of money or anything like that, but like my whole, like there was a good portion of my life where everything was just like, how do I get back on tour, like no matter what. But you'd book a show in Detroit and you'd book a show in Chicago, and Kalamazoo would break up the drive. Like on a map, that's how it looks. It looks like we're going to play this city, we're going to play that city, but we're going to break up the drive and play Kalamazoo. And Kalamazoo was always a better show than Detroit or Chicago. Like it was like, you know, the heart that was beating in Kalamazoo was explosive. They had this vibrant art scene that was like, everybody was like a visual artist, everybody was a musician. The shows, and this is the most important thing about Kalamazoo, which was like this years later after I moved there. People came to the shows. Everybody came to the shows. Like you could have a basement show and it'd just be like, everybody's like, you know, it's packed. Like, and a touring band would come through, and everybody would watch the touring band.
Oh, for sure.
And everybody like be nodding their head, talking to them, hanging out, like, come on back. Like
really supportive.
Yeah, it was very, very supportive. It was awesome. So like, and I met, I mean, to be perfectly honest, I met Chafe Hensley and Ann Hensley, right? And they've been in Kalamazoo for a long time. I met them when I was in a band called, I met Chafe when I was in a band called Jury Rig, before Most Secret Method. This is like early 90s. And I kept in touch with him, but him and Ann were the only people that I knew. And what was happening was I was in DC forever, and I wanted to go back to school to get a teaching degree, and I couldn't say no to anything music or art related at all. I just couldn't say no to anything. So I decided, if I don't move, I'm never going to finish school. You know, I'm never going to go to school. When I say finish school, I mean like, man, I had almost no school, right? So when I was 33, I decided I wanted to go to a town where I was comfortable. I liked Kalamazoo, and I only knew Chafe and Ann. And Ann told me, she said, if you move here, you will never have to worry about dinner. I'll make sure that you're fed every night. So I got there, they got me a job, they helped me find an apartment, the two of them. And then while I got on my feet, they fed me dinner every night. We played Monopoly every night. And it was just
adorable.
It was mad love. And eventually Erin and I, Erin moved like probably a year after I got there. Erin moved in with me up there, and she spent 4 years. I spent 5 years there. She spent 4 years there. And then we came back.
I can tell you, right now, that's why I'm in Ohio. I came back here to go to school.
Yeah.
So, and it's definitely a strange experience. And I get how going from a sort of, I mean, 33, you're not like, I'm 41 right now. So, but being basically settled into adult life and then going back to school, it's a weird experience.
Yeah.
And even at 41, I definitely don't turn down a lot of free meals. You know.
So I just turned 46. I just turned 46 last week, right? So like, God, even saying that out loud, to think that I was in Kalamazoo when I was 33, it doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but you know, I guess it was.
Weird, isn't it?
But even when I was, you know, because I did, you know, 4 years of college there, maybe 3.5 or something. But like the dichotomy between people, you know, my age, our age, and somebody who is just starting college
Right.
was just, it was wild. Do you know what I mean? Like I didn't hang out at all. Like I
Yeah.
was, I was definitely the old head, you know?
Well, I'm definitely not hanging out in this pandemic. I wasn't hanging out anyway, but now I'm just,
Yeah.
So, okay, you mentioned the visual arts, and that's the other cool thing, Ryan, is that you're quite the prolific artist of album covers, posters, and just very excellent artwork.
Yeah, like I said, I just, so I think, to put it simply, I'm nothing without a project. Like if I'm not if I'm not working on something, I'm gonna bumble around and maybe get a little sad. But so I have to, I don't know.
He will create a project. I mean, he will just like come out of his office and be like, got something else, you know? It's like,
Yeah,
as soon as he's done with one thing, he's got to move on to something else. He just cannot sit still. But
So,
that makes him so, that makes him who he is, you know? It's like,
yeah.
why he's so successful. And
no. I mean, not monetarily successful, but like, just, I've got a good.
You really want people to know you're not rich.
Like,
nobody thinks that.
well, you know, but I'm saying, like, it's like, I say that because I'll be honest. So I got invited to speak at East Tennessee State University as a guest speaker to speak about art one time.
Okay.
And I put together this slideshow of, because I was like the featured artist. So I put together the slideshow of all my art, but I put it with all the stuff from like, that I found really inspiring, like my influences for art. So I had all these shout outs to other artists, which include fine artists like John Singer Sargent, you know what I mean? Or like, I mean, it was just a bunch of stuff, you know, Manet was in there, like Toulouse-Lautrec, like it was like all this sort of stuff about art history, and then all the stuff from the punk scene, Jaime Hernandez from Love and Rockets, you know, comics, and just Raymond Pettibone, like whatever it was, do you know what I mean? Like I just had this crazy show with this PowerPoint thing behind me that was bigger than life, right?
Yeah.
And it went really well. It was like, I spoke for an hour. I was funny and self-deprecating. It was all good. It was totally good. Everybody was in, right? Yeah. And then the Q&A after it was done, the college kids who don't know my work, they got introduced to me right then.
Right.
They said to me, I was just like, oh yeah, here come the questions. This is awesome. And
do they get it? Do they get your work?
I mean, they knew that it was art. But anyway, but the question was,
for people, I'm sorry to interrupt you. For people watching though, can you just say your Instagram handle, because they should probably see what we're talking about.
What is it? Is it?
We can look it up.
I think it's
is
it R. Carroll or is it Ryan Carroll?
I think I have it here somewhere.
Hold on. You are.
It's either Ryan Carroll Nelson or it's R. Carroll Nelson.
Ryan Carroll Nelson.
Yeah, Ryan Carroll, and it's 2 R's and 2 L's in Carroll.
There you go. Okay,
Ryan
so
Carroll Nelson. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway,
what happened?
So the college kids in the audience, right, in this huge auditorium, said, first question. This kid said, it's so amazing that you got to work with all these bands and you did all these flyers and you did all these posters for all these bands. Like, how did you get to work with so many bands? And then I went, oh, I was in these bands.
Yeah.
No one, I didn't have to ask anybody's permission or anything. And then you could see, like, this is why they keep talking about the money thing. They wanted to ask me about careerism. They're studying this, and they're thinking about their future coming out of school, like landing a career. And I had to quickly say, like, wait, I didn't get paid for anything. Like,
right.
And you could see, like, we sat here for an hour with you, dude. You're like, you suck. Like you want to like, but it was like this whole thing of like I was like, I think I made $200 for like this t-shirt thing I did once, or I made this, but like most of the stuff has been like a labor of love, you know, not that I don't want to get paid for it, but it's just like, it's never been, it's really, for me, it was just like, this is just an extension of who I am. Like I'm always working on something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. So then, Erin, do you ever, because you're a creative mastermind type and your theater is closed down for now.
Yeah.
So do you ever try to harness this project energy into some kind of, you know, do you work together? Are you like sheltered in place doing some kind of crazy dancing, drawing, riffing project or something?
That's a good one. That'd be a good idea. Dancing, drawing project.
Just like
But
all gestures.
Yeah.
no, we aren't working on it. I mean, we sing a couple of songs together now and then. But for the most part, our projects are pretty separate. Ryan has done a lot of the artwork for the posters for our theater productions.
Oh, nice.
So that's been a major, that's been a big crossover for us.
Yeah.
Now and then I'll do a backup vocal on something that he's recording, but that's kind of I'll help with screen printing or something like that. But we kind of keep it separate on purpose, I think.
I'm
you know,
I'm hesitant to like, we've talked about this, and I'm hesitant to like do a band together with my wife. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like I love my relationship with Erin. You know what I mean? Like I like what we have. And then if we end up arguing over like bands tend to argue about, you know what I mean? About stuff, like I just like, there's part of me that doesn't want to ask for some sort of risk or something like that. Do you know what I mean? So it's not that I don't think like, oh, Erin, she can't sing, or like, oh no, not on my record, or something like that. It's always like, it's not that at all. It's more that like I don't know if I could navigate through my relationship with her as it is, and make that into like, also we're in a band.
No, I think it's very responsible. I think that there's a lot. It takes a lot of internal fortitude and risk and kind of a danger of sorts to summon the muse, as they say.
Right.
And have it be something that fuels your life, not just something you made and put out. Yeah. And it's a serious soup to start throwing ingredients in when you have in your relationship.
I think it's a matter of like, I feel like something would be sacrificed or compromised. Either the personal relationship for us, the personal relationship would be, or the music or art would be. And so I don't think either of us are willing to compromise or sacrifice either of those two things in order to just make art together, if that makes any sense. And I think it's amazing that there are couples, there are entire bands that are formed around partnerships, you know, couples. And I think it's amazing.
Yeah,
that they manage.
It's like, to each his own, right? Like somebody else is making it work. That's awesome. I wouldn't even say anything about that to anyone, like, oh, you're doing that? That's nuts. Like, I just like, other people can make it work. The other thing that we have going on is like, if I'm working on something with another band, like I have this, I'm working on a band,
other bands right now.
band called Yes Vacancy, and another band called Continuals. And right now we're like, with all the, you know, the COVID stuff, like we're working on stuff remotely with these other bands, and it's weird, you know, like it's crazy weird. And there's a lot of, if I'll be perfectly honest, there's a lot of self-doubt. Do you know what I mean? Like working this way, like
I won't do it. That's how much self-doubt I have in it. I won't do the work remote. I just won't do it.
But like, like pushing forward and like I don't know, can we do this sort of thing or whatever. And it's been nice to like play stuff for Erin, and she's not she's on my side, but she's not in the band, and she can listen to something objectively. Do you know what I mean? Like she can actually say, like if I say like, are the vocals just too loud on this? Like I don't think they're sitting in the mix or something, you know what I mean? I'm gonna get an honest response. And here's the thing, and I'm not saying we couldn't work together in a band, but what I'm afraid of is it to be like where you get into that weird mind game of like, do I look fat in these jeans? Where I ask her like, do my vocals sound okay with this? And then she says something like, well, what are you saying about my vocals or something, you know what I mean? Like, and then, you know, like it's not an extension of the project anymore. It has more to do with like how we're communicating as a couple at that moment. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, you know, that's how I feel about it.
let's do, I have questions about music and art, but I also want to I feel like I want to pick up the thread. Before we started recording, we were talking about how we met.
Yeah.
And,
So,
go ahead. What were you?
So like, I mean, I don't know where your memory is with this at all.
It's pretty good because it was distinct meeting the band.
Okay, so there were like, if it was that particular tour, there would have been 5 of us.
What tour was it?
If it should have been like Unsustainable Lifestyle.
Unsustainable Lifestyle, because I still listen to that record sometimes. I really like it a lot.
And then like we would have been it would have been Rachel and Boschla and me, Drew and Chad. And
Sounds right.
And I think you guys, like, because Jeff always does like rolls out the red carpet when he has people stay at his place.
Fact.
So I think you know, I mean, Erin and I have stayed there
a couple times,
and it's been like it's been kind of amazing because I know his house, but he's like so willing to give you a tour anyway.
Oh,
and then
tours are the best.
And then you get another tour of the house, and then you just see what he's accumulated,
his
or
current project,
what he's working on, and it's crazy. But anyway, I think he took me upstairs to show me where you guys were recording.
Yeah.
And I think you had laid out the whole ballroom and just taken over the whole thing.
We took over that whole house. So what we did. So what we're talking about is a record that my band at the time, Fast Piece of Furniture, made in Jeff Nelson's mansion. So Jeff is the only reason anyone ever listened to my music was because Jeff was on the drums, famous of Minor Threat, Dischord, etc. And the music was nothing like that, but Jeff has this, he's very passionate about architecture and archiving, which is what you say when you have high class tastes in your hoarding. And so he's archiving many things and doing a really, really organized job as well, by the way. Anyway, we took over the whole house and we're just making a record, and I was very particular about sounds we were getting in terms of an acoustic sort of thing, because we were doing everything on location digital. You know, it was, and so everything had to be about a natural, as best we could capture a cool sound in its natural environment. So ballroom drums, you know, all of the Led Zeppelin fantasies were coming true.
Yeah, but I don't know like what the state, because it was so long ago. So like the earlier digital technology would have been harder to figure out in terms of like trying to make something warm. Do you know what I mean? So like
oh yes,
like it was it was so easy to get cold and spiky with digital, especially like that would have been like I'm gonna guess like 2003 or 4.
Are you familiar with the Roland VS880?
I know only the name. I've never used it.
It's like the first littler compact all-in-one, or like something like 16 tracks of digital. That's for then,
Right.
decent sound quality.
And that's what it was. That's what that recording was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was not, everything about the acoustic spaces were cool. And the record is not the way I like to make a record. Because I'm a dude who's, every other record I ever made was set the band up and record. And if I screw up singing while I'm playing guitar, I'll go back and redo the vocals. Otherwise, we just made a record, gentlemen. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's it. So this was, you know, Jeff Nelson, part of what makes him so special is his ability to never stop. And so it became a chopping, that record was, you know, full on, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, overdub. Let me run the echo back through the thing and put a track and then try to bounce them down on the digital machine. Like, it was like all the worst of digital plus all the old school method of analog bouncing.
But I mean, I think everybody was doing that because everybody was trying to figure out how to do it. Like,
Yeah.
like I don't know. I mean, I might get this wrong, but you know, I remember like one of the earlier bands that I knew that was recording. I think again, I might get this wrong, but I think that the guys in Chicago, the Tortoise guys, were doing digital recording earlier than other people. But I might be wrong. Maybe they were analog dudes, but I just remember somebody saying that, you know, and I was thinking about like how much, like at that moment, because Tortoise was what they were like, you know, audio nerds, like, and very, very specific, and how much, like, after those records came out, everybody was like, we have to figure this out. If this is actually the new way, we have to be as experimental. We have to, like, and a lot of times people were trying to, because what sounds like a record to us, if you grew up listening to records, tape sounds like a record. Like,
Right.
an analog recording is what sounds good to our ears. A kid that was born in, I don't know, 2005, that kid has probably heard a lot of digital stuff, and an analog recording probably sounds like maybe a little trashy or something. Do you know what I mean? And
I don't know.
No, I don't know either. But I'm saying, like, if there is no more tape, right, after a while, other people's ears will adjust. Do you know what I mean?
My thought about it is this. From now on, I'm done. That Fast Piece of Furniture record was that. Like, I'm not doing that again. I like tape, and I'm a believer in hard evidence that music has been made. I don't like music that's in space. You know, I don't like my thing I made to be in space. I need a thing that I can.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, I think that a lot of the music that I write now, or I'm making now, I'm playing with, not to get too about me, but, you know, I'm playing with the idea of, it's older sounds, and those are sounds that inspire me. It's not that the music is old, although I'm referencing a lot of Americana stuff. I feel like it's, the stuff I'm working on is of a time, in terms of, you know, like Mark Rebo says, you're always playing a duet with history, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm definitely playing a duet with a specific history. And I think that if somebody born into the 2000s who's grown up and always listened to digital music, if you take that same music and play it on vinyl, it would actually be pretty wimpy. I actually don't think that would be the best way to listen to something that's designed around infinitely expansive lows.
I think we're saying the same thing then, because that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm saying, like, if, you know, like, we've been conditioned, you know, with our introduction to music, and that's like, have you ever recorded a record? Like, you finished a record and then you're looking around at your bandmates, and the question, like the thought balloon, like if it was a comic, the thought balloon above everyone's head is just like, but does it sound like a record? Like, that was actually a question people asked all the time. Like, I just want to know if it sounds like a record, because we grew up listening to records, and we want to know if, like, our thing sounds like, can it sit in with a real record or something like that? Do you know what I mean? Like, is it like, and the variety of recording is kind of crazy. And it's not even just recording. A lot of it is performance. I once told, I don't, you probably met Don from Inner Ear. Do you know Don?
I don't think I ever met Don.
Well,
but I know of Don. I
said to Don one time something like the Bad Brains Black Dots record came out.
Such a good record.
And I said to him, this is a really early Don recording. And I said to Don, after the record came out, I said, man, the Black Dots thing came out. That's crazy. It's wonderful. I was just like, I loved hearing that, man. That's great. And I was giving him a compliment. Like, and he stopped me. And Don is like all Zen. I love him. He's like an idol. Like I love Don, like legitimately love him. Do you know what I mean? And I said this to him, giving this compliment, and he's so much taller than me. He looks down and he goes, really? And I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, well, I'm glad you think it sounds good. I don't think it sounds very good, but, and then he said this really amazing thing. He said, I didn't know what I was doing then. He said, I had just started recording. And he said it just matter of fact. And he goes, you're hearing a great band. And he's like, it almost didn't matter where I put the mics. If you got next to Bad Brains at that moment in their career, they just destroyed, right? Which is, I do give Don credit. Don't get the wrong idea, like give Don credit, and this is a moment of him being humble or whatever. But ever since he said that, I do think about that too, because of course it's the performance. Like, don't ever forget about it's why like the first soccer team record is like, and I know it's not for everybody, that's not everybody's bag, but it's a lot of really raw recordings. Melissa and I intended to clean them up. A lot of them were demos. And when I sat down to re-record things, they sucked.
Yeah.
And after a while, Melissa and I just looked at each other and said, man, the demo is the song. There's like, and if you listen to that record, there's a song, Here's Why Dancers Smoke. If you listen to the end of it, like the, what do you call it? What's the big machine that blows the heat out in your house?
Furnace?
Yeah, the furnace. The furnace comes, it was right next to where I was recording. And the furnace like, kicks on. And during the fade out, you clearly hear my furnace come on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And I tried to re-record it, and it just like every take sucked.
It's the performance, man. It's like you say.
I was like, this is just it, man. This is just like, I don't have any regret in putting that out, because I do feel like, I mean, have you ever, and man, I'm not comparing myself to the Beatles, but if you've ever listened to the anthology, the box set, that white anthology box set that they did with all their demos, and you start listening to like, some of those demos are like way more interesting than the finalized recordings. Do you know what I mean? Like, especially like late stuff like Polythene Pam, Mean Mr. Mustard. Do you know what I mean? Just hearing John bang it out on an acoustic guitar is kind of fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, that's why it was so revelational. Revelational? I don't even know if that's a word. But when they did that Let It Be Naked.
Yeah.
And they let you hear it without the Phil Spector treatment.
Yeah.
And you're just hearing a band. That's why it was so stunning. It was just amazing.
Yeah. I mean,
you ever hear this quote? Chet, I think it was Chet Atkins, but it's been attributed to other people. So I don't know who said it for real, but it's a great quote where someone told him how great his guitar sounded. Have you ever heard this?
No.
Okay. So he plays a set and it's Chet, right? Chet CGP. He put those, about Chet? He added the initials CGP for certified guitar player onto the end of his name.
Awesome.
So he plays his set, man, and he's playing his finger style, just killing it. And I guess like some young player coming up, I don't know who it was, but they were like, man, that guitar sounds so good. It's such a good sounding guitar. You know how people do.
Yeah.
And he looks at him, and he was like famous for being like very proper. And he calmly set the guitar down, and he looked at it, and he turned back. He goes, "How's it sound now?" He's just staring at it. I just think that's so funny.
So crazy. I had a kid at I was in a band called Routineers, and we played a show, and I had amp problems. I had a borrowed amp. It sounded like death. I had an SG that doesn't sound like any SG ever, right? It's not like I'm playing, Angus Young's SG, right? This thing was peculiar. And then through this amp, it just sounded awful. Oh my God. It was awful. like, man, my ears work. It was actual shit. And we played, I played through the show, and the show must go on. Do you know what I mean? But the whole time I was actually starting to perspire, not from the show, but just from the heat of embarrassment from what was coming out of the amp. And when we were done with the sets, this kid came up to me and said, "My God, you've got a Marshall 800 head. You've got an SG." like the setup looked like it should sound this way.
Oh, man.
And he went, "How are you getting that sound? That's crazy." And I was like, "It is crazy." So I was just like, "I'm really glad you appreciate it." Really dialed it in. But I was like, I would have been happy to have Angus Young's sound. That's absolutely what I wanted, but it was not it. It was crazy. It was thin and weak and just it was terrible. But this kid thought I had deliberately tweaked it to, I had engineered it, and that was what I was going for.
Erin, do you have this in the dance world where I don't know what the dancer's relationship is to gear. I did some stuff where I used to train physically with circus arts people.
Oh,
And
wow.
I know how that was, people that do silks, and I was in the conditioning side of it. So I was more helping people get stronger for trapeze and such. But so I never was the guy with, I have friends that are professional. I have a friend that's a professional juggler. So, anytime you ever see him, he's got all kinds of weird gear that he's going to juggle or tie to something. What is the dance world gear thing? Are they as fetishistic?
In the ballet world, for sure.
What is it? The shoes?
Ballet dancers, yeah, their shoes are everything. And I'm not a part of that world anymore. I sort of left the ballet side of things when I was around 18 and decided to go to college to study dance. And so the college dance circuit is usually very contemporary, modern dance. But ballerinas rely heavily on their shoes.
Yeah.
They kind of swear by them. And it's an amazing thing.
And they wear them out too. I mean, they don't last.
I'm gonna keep talking. Yeah. I'm gonna step out of frame and try turning on a light, because the sun has gone further and further down to where I am really in the dark. Is it offensive to your artistic sensibilities? Am I too in the dark?
No.
Maybe I'll leave it alone. Keep going about the feet and the shoes and the.
Well, the shoes are when dancers start out on point. By the time they get to be professionals, early on professionals, between age 16 and 20 or so, they rely on getting what they call the stock shoes from whatever dance ballet company they're with. So those are the shoes that the primas and the soloists and all those folks, they don't need anymore. So they just get whatever shoes they can get their hands on, and they're going through anywhere between a pair of shoes a day to 3 pairs of shoes a week or something like that, just depending on the role. And as you become more established and you rise up through the ranks, you get to this point where you can have a shoe made for you, and it's a big deal, where you can go into your maker of choice, whatever shoemaker that is, point shoe maker, and they will fit it to your foot. So it'd be like the equivalent of having a custom guitar made or something, you know. And there's so many different things that you can tweak about a point shoe. Like, you would have no idea, and I'll spare you because it's totally boring. But it gets to a point where they rely heavily on these shoes, and they will have the maker, they will manufacture enough shoes for one dancer. So like, there's a company called Block Point Shoes. I'm sorry, Freed. So Freed Point Shoes, and they're based out of London. And there's one maker. So like, if I were dancing with the Royal Ballet in London, I would have one maker that made my shoe. And they would make like bags and bags of shoes for me and have them sent to the dance company. And I go through these shoes, and they're sort of rationed out to me, however many. So it's like, that's a big deal in the ballet world. My dance world, I think there's actually sort of, it's probably the exact opposite for contemporary dancers, where we like, you know,
shoes.
Boast, no shoes, and we're like very boastful of how we need nothing. We can just dance wherever, and you know.
Yeah, but I will say this though, like if you think about it, like if you compare nerds, you know, and various arts and subcultures and stuff like that, what dancers do, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what dancers do, like when they watch a performance, you know, like when you watch a band, you like a gear nerd will look at gear, they'll look at pedals, and they'll do all this kind of stuff. Sometimes dancers look at stuff through the scope of history and in terms of technique, and they can analyze something with in regard to composition, but they can also analyze even breathing. So like if a dancer is actually breathing the way, inhaling and releasing a certain way, like it signifies how they were trained under, do you know what I mean? Like under, basically under what flag you fly. And that goes for like a really old school modern dancer or a really contemporary modern dancer. Do you know what I mean? Or somebody like that, like Erin can probably look at somebody and say, that person did ballet their whole life and they just started doing modern. Do you know what I mean? And it just has to do with, it could be anything from the way somebody walks, you know, because the ballerinas have like a classic duck walk. I was in a grocery store the other night, and I was behind this woman, and I was just like, oh, ballerina. She's like walking around like this.
It's true. But you can really I mean, you can just like with musicians, you can sort of tell somebody's background, or the way they might play the bass, and whether they are, you know, finger or pick, or like you can just sort of tell what world they came from and who they probably spent a lot of time listening to. And it's the same thing with dance. Like you can you can tell how people trained and what technique they probably learned that was the, you know, foundation of their skill.
Yeah, because it's really like studying a specific technique. When you have a teacher, there's usually a teacher that actually has mastered this thing. Do you know what I mean? And that teacher's students will sort of like, if everybody takes to that teacher, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they become like these like disciples of that technique. Do you know what I mean? And then you go to another teacher and try to broaden it somehow, some way. But then, you know, people find where they're comfortable and they keep coming back to it.
So Erin, then when you, forgive me that I haven't really had the luxury of watching Beauty Pill perform since those days. You know, I've heard music online, but I haven't seen Beauty Pill except for the video that I just watched.
I think it's hard to see them.
Yeah.
They don't play often.
So after I'm sure you're familiar with how they recorded Beauty Pill Describes Things as They Are, the album they released 2000.
I'm not that familiar. I mean, I know I don't have an ongoing conversation with Chad other than just being interested in what Beauty Pill has done since I met long ago. But before you talk about the recording, let me ask you this, Erin, really quick. What is your relationship to that history of dance and how you said you kind of studied or at least practiced and now choreograph with kind of a swath of information that comes from your own training? how does that show up with Beauty Pill?
The the main way that it transfers
Yeah.
is just being semi comfortable on stage.
You just kind of let it naturally, things happen and you don't think about it much?
A little, but and frankly, Beauty Pill has not played live but one time since I have been playing with Beauty Pill, and I've been singing with Chad and the band for a little over 2 years now.
Okay.
But Beauty Pill is very decidedly, Chad is very specific about when and where he's going to play live.
Okay.
And so they played live a handful of tours right after the Beauty Pill Describes Things as They Are release in 2015 that came out. And then they were in hiatus for a while. And then I sort of came onto the scene about 2018, I think. And they hadn't had any new material out in a while. But it's a little, Chad and I have talked about this a lot. Like I've been performing on stage in some capacity since I was like 4 years old, but that's different. That's different when I'm singing. I think that I might be crossing over this line now, but I think originally I just thought that I wasn't as judgmental of myself singing as I am as a dancer, almost like too much information and I'd studied too much as a dancer to just be able to put myself out there very freely. But
Yeah.
I felt like that was my approach singing. It was sort of like, why the hell not? And I've been singing my whole life, just never really ever with a band. So I think I was able to transfer just the skills of being able to be comfortable in front of people performing in a way. But yeah, I don't know if that's what you were asking.
Yeah. I mean, it is. I was kind of just curious about what that feels like to put the two together. And then can we nerd out on music a little bit? Because I'm real curious about there have been so many folks that had a voice in the singing department in one way or another with Beauty Pill, or I guess there's a commonality. And before we started talking, I listened to some Beauty Pill and I was trying to put my finger on it. I've had a real hard time nailing it down, but there's something about it. There's definitely a tremendous amount of harmonic color to the compositions. I feel like if I picked up one of my guitars and tried to work it out, I would find that there's certain target tones in like that Chad writes where he's hitting certain tones that relate to the chords that are different from someone else, but I can't prove that in a court of law. And but there's something about the melodies that's very distinct, and certainly there's a commitment to some sort of a almost vibrato-less delivery of the melody.
Yeah,
What is it?
I think he's very into a very straightforward, not a dry delivery, but vibrato's not really in the Beauty Pill vocabulary. It's just very straightforward.
I'll say this because I was with Chad for 3 of the singers, and what happens? Imagine this. Imagine that Chad wrote these songs and he wrote the lyrics, and he's telling the vocalist this is how they go. And in some cases, he's even sung versions of them. He just doesn't want his voice on it. Do you know what I mean? So there'd be like there might be a Chad demo of it, right? And Chad's voice is crazy different from the female counterpart that he's working with, right?
Sure.
I mean, that's obvious. But Chad has always been interested in male female vocals. He's always like his original vision of the band was that we would play things live, and Chad would sing one of Rachel's songs one night, and then the next night Rachel would sing that song and Chad would sing some other, you know what I mean? Like, and that they would alternate, like, so like that was his, he may have let this go at this point, but that was always his vision, was just like, whenever you see Beauty Pill, you don't know who's going to sing what.
That's still Chad's, like, that is his, I think his dream, his ideal.
No one's done
for
it,
Beauty
though.
Pill. It's something that he and I talk about. And I think that on Please Advise, the EP that just came out, there was a massive discussion we were having. And there were, I would say every song that's on this album, I sang at some point when he and I would get together and practice.
Yeah, even the Chad song, there's a version of Erin singing the song that Chad sings on it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
and that, so this EP has, it came out in 3 different formats. So, well, 4. There's the digital, the vinyl, the CD, and then the cassette. And Chad has worked with a couple of different design folks, and so Brian Grennert and Nora McKelvey, and people that he really wanted to bring together to help package this and showcase the artwork. So yes, The Damnedest Thing, which you hear on all formats, is the extra track that you will get on the CD. So every format then has another extra track on it. But we talked a lot about, you know, his vocals versus mine, and that was a real challenge at first, to figure out how Chad's vocals fit on me, and how to deliver them. And we, and he was just very, very much wanted for me to just sing them the way I was going to sing them, and not be concerned outside of the actual vocal melody, to not be concerned with how I was delivering them. And he has a very clear direction. I mean, he would say, keep doing what you're doing.
That's what I was going to say, though.
But if he didn't like it, he'd be like, yeah, but change that here.
So always look at it like this. Like, anytime you hear if you hear someone else singing on a Beauty Pill record, if you hear the female vocalist, always think about it in terms of a director. Somebody like a director has a specific style. And you have actors that are like, imagine like Woody Allen. Woody Allen has, like, when people are in a Woody Allen movie, somehow they always seem to talk like Woody Allen. Do you know what I mean?
Tarantino, like a Tarantino film.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, and you know, it's not that they've studied all of this kind of dialogue, and I have to be rapid fire and I have to do this. It's like, when you're in that setting and you're in that world, somebody is directing you toward that. Do you know what I mean? And Chad isn't saying, no, don't do that, or something. Like, he's actually letting, like, I was in the house when Erin was doing this. He's letting Erin, like, explore stuff, but then kind of finalize, like, he's the one who would finalize it and say, I like that works. This, you know what I mean? So you have to think about it in terms of just like a director.
And it has been a very curious thing to be a part of, because I do sing, and I have, I would say that the way I sing with Beauty Pill and with Chad is a slight variation of what I would gravitate towards naturally, just in my natural singing in the shower voice or whatnot, you know, or just here at home with Ryan. So, and it's funny, I'm just realizing this as we're talking, that is something else that probably translates, like being used to being on stage, being directed by someone, and being able to take that direction as a singer and not be offended by it.
Right.
Realize that's his specific, that's what he's going for. Like, he wrote the song, and be able to receive that. And there, every once in a while, I will say, I want to try it this way. And I'm getting better at that, because he and I haven't been working together for that long. But for the most part, he will receive it and say yeah.
Which is also why we don't play in a band together, because that's not how it would go. Like,
That's hilarious.
babe, do you think you could do this? No, I do not think I would do that. Like I don't think I would do that at all. Like,
Well, I think of the
way
music.
better. I can sing better than you. What are you asking me to do?
I think it helps that a lot of Chad's compositions, the way I hear them, are kind of inclusive in nature, if that makes sense, because I think he uses a lot of different elements from, we were talking about that duet with the history of music thing. I mean, you'll hear broken up loops of rhythms and many intertwining melodies that sound like they were written and then assigned a voice. So there, to me, there's kind of a greater tapestry. It reminds me of how not that it sounds like Stereolab, but a similar compositional strategy where there will be weaving melodies that create kind of a pattern of harmony, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so.
And he was also early on, like so when I was in Most Secret Method and he and Beauty Pill had just started, we were recording a record at Inner Ear with, and part of it with Chad, not in its entirety, but part of it with Chad. But I remember when he had first started working at Inner Ear, and like we had played with Smart and Crazy. I'd known Chad for a long time, you know. We were friends, but like going to like where he was set up at Inner Ear, he had right away, the first thing I saw when I walked into his space was a Latin Playboys poster. And I don't know if you've ever listened to Latin Playboys, but
it's been a long time to where I can't even remember what I listened to.
Their first record is pretty perfect. It's like, and it's very interesting right out the gate. Like, and there aren't a lot of stinkers. There aren't any stinkers, and it's like, and it's recorded masterfully, and it's like, it's a wonderful audio experience. It's incredible. And I bonded with, I saw, like, man, I'm telling you right now, I've seen one Latin Playboys poster. It's the one that was hanging in chat. Like, no one had that. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I kind of bonded on, like, man, you're nerding out on this, man, me too, like that sort of thing. But it was, but if you listen to that, if you listen to the guy who recorded that, who's also in the band, his name's Chad Blake. There are a lot of, and Chad stuff doesn't sound like that. But if you think about like elements of found sound coming in to the recordings and all that kind of stuff, or like, you know, just being experimental with stuff, like pulling in other instruments, but like in kind of a wild way, not like a safe way, like, oh, here comes the sax, you know, like cue,
no,
like that.
That's it. I was thinking that when I talked about it being an inclusive arrangement, there's no token elements.
Yeah.
In other words, it's not like, let's do this country-like tune, but we'll put it over a hip-hop beat, you know. Right. It's very much, everything is essential, an essential member of a community of sounds.
I also think that, because I grew up with a lot of hip-hop, I also think that part of his thing is, like, if you think about, like, It Takes a Nation of Millions to Public Enemy,
yeah,
and you think of like that record, and you think of De La Soul, 3 Feet High and Rising, and maybe Paul's Boutique too, but specifically 3 Feet High and Rising and It Takes a Nation of Millions. Those two records are so loaded, so completely loaded with samples. It is a cacophony of insanity. Like, it's like there are moments where the DJ is pulling in samples only once. They never repeat, ever, and it's just like a sliver of thing. Especially Terminator X with Public Enemy.
He's the best.
And and so, like, when I listen to some of like what's happening with Chad, when it, like, there'll be sounds rattling around in this ear, and then, you know, they might dissolve over here or something like that. And then it might have been countering the beat, and it never returns because it's not part of the hook, it's part of the texture.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Then it's like, I immediately think of Public Enemy, and the music does not sound like Public Enemy.
No, I understand.
But like I mean, I grew up like enamored with those records and the sort of the aspect of like you're making a collage that is actually working. It's not coming apart. It's actually cohesive and it's actually working.
Yeah.
I could go on and on for. I could probably talk for an hour about Night of the Living Bassheads.
That's my jam.
That's the
That's
jam,
my
dude.
jam. Night of the Living Bassheads is perfect. What a perfect song. From the moment it starts. Have you
oh
forgotten
my God.
the moment it starts? It's incredible.
Yeah, but it
says, "Here it is," right? That's the opening line, right? Here it is. Like, here it is.
Well, there's that whole
damn.
lead up, right? There's like a lead up to it, of course. But man, that moment where we gonna get it on down now or whatever, and they start turning. How low can you go? And, oh my God.
Yeah. No, but there's a line in there where he says, they sample Salt and Pepper from their first record, Hot, Cold, and Vicious. There's a sample in there for 1 second where one of the women in the band says, "Yo, Herb." Like they're talking about a guy named Herb.
So good.
They just mentioned something about Herb a line before, and you just hear somebody from Salt and Pepper go, "Yo, Herb," like that, and never comes back. And it's like, it is such a slight, and that entire record is that like Night of the Living Bassheads is for sure like a masterpiece, but that whole record is like that. I can't imagine for 1 minute making that record on analog. I cannot imagine at all. The labor that went into that record is insane.
Dude.
And when it came out, I know I'm going off now.
No, it's great.
When that record came out, I was, and again, like the first hip hop I listened to was Grandmaster Flash, like New York, big city of dream, every day New York ain't always what it seemed.
Right.
Like, and that was like the first stuff I started like memorizing right away. And I was a fan. Like I liked rap. I liked hip hop music, right? When It Takes a Nation Millions come out, I was actually scared.
Oh
like,
no.
I thought it was like I couldn't, it was like my brain wasn't ready for it. And I was like, the JB's horn sections on repeat and like the shriek and over again.
God,
It was
so good.
such intense art that I actually found it frightening. But like a car accident you can't look away from, I kept coming back to it.
Oh, you're speaking my language. So I first heard rap music. I guess it could have been the Beastie Boys because they were happening, but like my first experience of rap where I knew I was listening to rap or something, first it was the Fat Boys.
Yeah.
And I thought that the music, because when I was at that age when the Beastie Boys were happening with License to Ill and then Crushing from the Fat Boys, I thought rap was kind of like a joke music because I didn't understand much else about it as a little kid, you know.
Right.
So the first time I heard Public Enemy, I missed Nation of Millions. I mean, I grew up on a farm in Ohio, you know, give me a break, you know, we didn't have Nation of Millions.
Fear of a Black Planet. Was that
That's first thing I heard was Brothers Gonna Work It Out.
Yeah.
And it scared me to death. I literally thought these fuckers were coming. Like, I thought they were coming to the farm to take it back. You know what I mean? Like, it was, and I know what you mean because it had such a, you hear people talk about the ring of truth. This Public Enemy has the ring of truth, even when you're terrified in it. It's like the will shatter the Liberty Bell. You know what I mean? Like it's like harsh.
Like there are a lot of examples for me of a band that was just, they were doing something that was, they had taken it, they had done something that I wasn't ready for. Do you know what I mean? I was a fan in DC. I was a fan of this band called Soulside.
Okay.
And and I had the first Soulside record, and then I really got into Trigger, their middle record, and then they put out this record called, which is a crazy title. They have this record called Hot Bodygram.
Okay.
And the opening, and I was a fan. I was going to their shows. You know what I mean? Like I was into Soulside, And I put the needle on the record. I just bought the new record. I didn't hear a single song on it. And I put the needle on the record as right when it came out. And the opening song it sounds like the bassist is playing all of the strings at once without holding, like it says, like, I don't know if that's what he's doing, but that's what it sounded like to me, was him just playing all the strings at once. And then the beat came in, boom, like, and it just, right? But the bass line, I could not get my brain around it. And I was like, this is my band. Do you know what I mean? Like, I can't. And then I remember like taking the needle off, going, oh man, I don't know. It was scary to me. And the opening line was, this is God's city. This is Love Parade. This is Mr. Fucker's last rites. Like, wow. I have no idea what that means at all, but this noise, and to say this is God's city, like, I wasn't ready for it. Like, the hairs on my arm were standing up. You know what I mean? And the same thing with like the Public Enemy thing. Like, I was hearing an artistic, like a new art. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was experiencing it. And what did I do with Soulside? I went back in. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just like, no, I got it. Like, I am fascinated by this. Do you know what I mean? And you got to think also, like, I know I'm talking too much, but also like, think about like go to 1979, Gang of Four's Entertainment.
R.I.P.
The opening song on Entertainment, Ether, right, is opens with bass, right? And imagine that you're in 1979 when everybody's playing like easygoing classic rock, and this, you know what I mean? Like, people hanging out on their Camaros, smoking cigarettes and stuff. Do you know what I mean? But imagine buying this Gang of Four record, putting the needle on the record, and hearing like, and then the guitar comes in so high pitched, right? So like, not high pitched, so trebly. So you have like this great rhythm section and this bright guitar. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Weaponized, man. And it's weaponized treble. And that the first time I heard that riff, and then that guitar, check it.
Yeah.
It's like, what's her name in Jerry Maguire? You had me at hello. It's like, you had me at the chicken.
Look, I heard Gang of Four. I have to say, I heard Gang of Four in my like early high school days when I was getting into the underground, but I didn't own any Gang of Four. Do you know what I mean? I heard somebody playing it in a comic shop, and I asked the owner of a comic shop. I said, "What is this?" And he was like, like real snobby. It's Gang of Four. You know what I mean? And I remember the name, but years later, I was with some friends of mine in the punk scene. Of course, I knew who Gang of Four was, but I didn't own Entertainment, which is a crime. You know what I mean? And and this my friend Christina put it on, just like we were hanging out. Me and my friend Todd were hanging out. She put it on in the background, like in a group house in Mount Pleasant. And I heard Gang of Four for the first time. That's what I consider hearing them for the first time. And I was just like it was, but I always listen to things in the scope of history. I always listen to things like Beatles, put the needle on the record for Beatles' White Album. And the opening song is Back in the USSR. What a jam. Like, what a jam. Like, what's the first song on the new Beatles record? That one where they do a Beach Boys hook. like that, like crazy.
Yeah.
Like, and you put that, or like Taxman from Revolver. Put the needle on the record. 1, 2, 3, 4.
That one's I think that's a bigger shocker.
That's the best. Like, coming out of Rubber Soul, which is a masterpiece. And then what do? They slam you with Revolver, and they get that first song. They open with a George song, and that song, like, it's crazy what's happening in Taxman.
And people forget that was politically aggressive as well.
Absolutely, sure. Absolutely. And Yeah, that's a real statement of their arrogance, that they could actually, like, you know what, we can do this. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's not an obnoxious arrogance, like,
Right.
but what I'm saying is, the other thing is, like, Pixies.
The baser.
No, no, but no, I was thinking, Surfer Rosa. Put the needle on the record for Surfer Rosa, and it starts with that beat, and then it drops. Dun, dun, dun. Like, it's so good.
How about Dinosaur Jr.? You're living all over me.
Wait, I don't know it. I don't know it.
You were in a Dinosaur Jr.
I had Green Mind. I don't know. Yeah. Is that the one before?
Yeah. So it's Green Mind is a little bit of a transition out of the original lineup.
That's the only one I had.
Well, sometime do yourself a favor.
I'll do it tonight.
So you're living all over me. Drop the needle on track 1, and keep in mind that when the record label heard it, they turned it off because they said, we got a bad one. No, that's how I'm starting the record, actually.
Shake it up, right? You got to shake it up. That's good.
Yeah, dude. Okay, a couple questions. I don't know how your time is. I don't know if I'm keeping you up.
I mean,
we're good.
Yeah, we're okay.
We don't want to bore you.
I hang up when I'm bored. I'm good. So I have a couple dork questions. One, while we're on it, is, so you talked about your bad SG and your crummy JCM 800 apparently. You know what? Can I share really fast a pet peeve? Because I'll go to blues jams, and it's just because I like to keep myself able. I don't usually feel like I've done anything related to making a good bit of music when I jam at a blues jam, like an open jam with strangers. But there are sweet little moments that happen. And also, I don't know, I just feel like, I won't get into all that, but my pet peeve, you show up, there's some kind of giant amplifier that has no business being in such a small room, or it's just medium sized, but the guy has the jam amplifier on like 1.
Yeah.
And has a pedal board that looks like NASA designed it.
Yeah.
Apparently to emulate the sound of a guitar playing through an amplifier.
Yeah.
And it's so, I'm not mad at effects. I've done the effects driven thing, and I'm a frequent guest on a podcast with a guy who builds pedals, and we talk all kinds of stuff. But it's a pet peeve that I feel like the guitar as an instrument is often a controller of instruments and rarely just played as a guitar.
I am outside of that world. Like, I know that world exists, and I've seen
pedal world.
Yeah, I mean, of course I've been around it, but I like, I want, honestly, everything about me had to do with touring and the simplicity of touring. So like when I played drums when I toured, I'll get really specific. I insisted on having, because I had a crash and a ride, I insisted on having 2 straight stands. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
No boom.
Right.
And that was so that when I set up, it didn't matter which stand I grabbed. They could be interchangeable. They're the exact same stand. One sits this high. Sorry, I'm trying to get on camera. One sits this high, one sits this high. But it could be whichever stand. Do you know what I mean?
Of course.
And I got into like, how light can I carry things? How simple can I make this for the sake of tour, and setting up and tearing down. And it was liberating. Like, it was liberating to have less. But I'm not a purist about it. Like, I'm not like that. I just like personally I'd play through a pedal if the song called for playing through something, but I don't necessarily like. Really, what I want is I want to dial in my sound through the amp, guitar through the amp, and be happy with that, and then go from there. So
what's your guitar and amp like? If
okay.
You're happy?
So first of all, let me say this: the SG that I have I like. I know I was kind of making fun of it, but it is a weird guitar. I don't understand it. It belongs to my friend Eric Deno. He let me borrow it a long time ago. He played in a band called Kerosene 454, and he let me borrow this guitar, and I've just had it ever since. And I hear music on it.
Yeah.
So it's the guitar that I like to play the most. And at this point, like I've actually set it up in a way that like it's very, very musical to me, and I love it. So just so you know, but that one's being repaired right now. The I play right now. I play a Dan Electro in soccer team. My bandmate Melissa bought a Dan Electro. She let me borrow it, and I still have it. And that's been the soccer team guitar.
Like an old school phenolic one?
It's not. It's from the '90s. In the '90s, they were Dan Electro was making guitars for really cheap.
Yeah.
They were like $70 to $90.
Uh-huh.
And she bought one, and this thing stays in tune, and the action is perfect, and the tone of it is like it's exactly what I like. It's the type of guitar that like when you hear it on a record, you're like, oh, that's a Dan Electro. Do you know what I mean? Like,
no, I love those guitars, and I love the '90s Dan Electros too.
So yeah, it was a good moment. So like that, and it's technically Melissa's guitar, but I mean I've had it forever. But I play that. I play that through I bought an AC30. I just wanted. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why I bought AC30. I've been playing a Vox practice amp forever.
Yeah. And
I've done more recording with this tiny 10-inch box.
It's a Pathfinder?
Yeah. And and it's like it sounds so good for all the analog stuff, all the Tascam 388 stuff. It sounded so good. I did it.
I want one of those, by the way.
I did it.
388.
I love that machine. Don't even get me started. Anyway, so
it's still here in the house.
Yeah, it's right here. It's right next to me.
I want one really bad.
I repaired a number of times.
But that Pathfinder, I had the Marshall set up for a band and the Pathfinder set up, and I had Don at Inner Ear put two mics, like one on the Pathfinder and one on the Marshall, and he kept coming into the room while I was doing the sound check and checking his mics and coming back. And when he came in the third time, I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, I said, "Is there something wrong?" And he went, "I just keep thinking that I've switched them around." He's like, "I can't believe all that sound is coming out of that little thing." We played in that same band, Routineers. We played with this metal band called Darkest Hour at the Black Cat. And Darkest Hour had stacks. They had massive stacks on the stage. And I was talking to the sound guy. He ended up marrying Melissa and being in soccer team eventually. But at the time, he was just Black Cat sound man, this guy, Dennis. And I was talking to Dennis, and Dennis and I had he was a great sound man. I had a really good rapport with him. And I was just like, "Dennis, I kind of want to amp this." And he went, "How about we just amp that?" Like, he says, "I'll mic it and we'll just go through Black Cat's sound system." And I was like, "That'd be hilarious." So we just did it, right? And it was the best time we ever played there. It sounded great, micing this tiny amp at the Black Cat. And after we played, the guitarist, Mike from Darkest Hour, came up to me, and he's a very funny guy, but he came up to me and he went, "My God, all that sound out of that little amp." And then he looked at his own amps, because it was all backlined, and he was like, "What are we doing?" Carrying all this stuff around. But I mean, it was funny that he noticed. Do you know what I mean? Anyway.
But the AC30 is nothing like that.
No. But so the AC30, but I liked Vox because of this Pathfinder.
I see. Right.
And the AC30 is like the classic thing.
Yeah.
And then I was watching a PJ Harvey live video.
I'm so in love with her, by the way.
Yeah. I was watching a PJ Harvey live video, and behind her was an AC30 and an orange setup. And they were just side by side, and that was her sound, was the mix of the orange and the AC30. And it sounded like God. And I was just like, well, I'll get the AC30 now. And eventually.
And you love it?
I love it, yeah. But it's only good, it's got to be loud. Like,
Yeah, but AC30s are not even an amplifier until you crank them.
yeah, it's they don't. So like in a quiet setting, it's not a great amp.
It's hard. It's harsh.
And then with soccer team, I play it loud enough to get some bite with the Dan Electro and the AC30, and with continuals, I play an SG Studio, not SG. What am I saying? Les Paul, a Les Paul Studio.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And I like the matte finish.
Yeah, I got you.
So I bought that. I always wanted to try Les Paul. So and what I'm not sold on it, but it sounds really good loud.
Yeah, sure.
Through the AC30. So like I'm sticking with it with continuals for now.
So,
And then lastly, I should show you this because this is Erin's
show me stuff.
Erin's father's guitar. I've been recording with this.
Oh, I like that.
And this is man, I don't even know what this is.
The Fender Jaguar pre-CBS. I think it my 1964.
It's this is a
look on the plate on the back where the neck meets the body.
Yep.
Here. Does it start with an L?
Yep.
Yeah,
it's probably a 64.
Yeah.
So my dad's a musician, and he
can you see where his belt buckle from the 60s wore a spot into this thing?
Yeah.
It's pretty killer. But did we get this fixed up at one point?
No, I just
or
changed
my
the strings and cleaned it.
It's beautiful.
My dad's a musician. He's a bass player, but he started out on guitar, and the instruments that he used to play and covets and hoards and would never let anybody have, he's very recently let Ryan borrow them indefinitely. So that's nice.
I'm so jealous, and I love Jaguars. I feel like people play them wrong, but I love them.
I gotta say, I'm not. I'm trying to figure it out. Like you probably hate me using it.
No,
but
I don't. I don't hate you using them, but I just think that people use them in applications that are outside of the guitar's aptitude.
There's too many options on it, and there's all these different things. Like there's quite an array of sound that you get out of this thing. So like trying to find a sweet spot for a specific recording on a specific song, it's really necessary to kind of fiddle. You know what I mean? And so it's been really hard. I've got it in a good spot right now. But I did a recording a long time ago. I had in Beauty Pill, the first era of Beauty Pill, we played with a bassist named Abram Goodrich, and he bought a not the Jaguar. What's the other one?
Jazzmaster.
Jazzmaster. He had a Jazzmaster, and he left it at my house because that's where we were practicing. And I was trying to do these recordings with it, and I could not get that. I was just like, I don't get this guitar, man. This guitar sounds like crap. Like, I just don't get it. And then I was doing this recording, and I just tried it out. I did another setting, and it worked. And then I suddenly, like, my eyes got real big. I was just like, oh, I get it. I totally get this guitar now. I get this guitar. And then I was just like, my world had completely, it was like something had unlocked. And Abram called me the next day and said, yeah, man, I need to pick up my guitar.
Yeah.
Never saw it again.
Do you understand do you know what all the knobs and switches do on it?
Yeah, now I have an okay understanding of it now. Yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of but it's not, I still have to stop and look at it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. What I like about Jaguars, I'm really into historical Fender facts, but also I really enjoy the history of electric musical instruments, and where that guitar fits in is kind of a fascinating spot. But I think the reason it's so confusing is most of the guitars that are legendary from the time it was built, rather the time it was designed, they've been co-opted very well by the hard rock thing.
Yeah.
And kind of fetishized in that light. But the Jaguar and Jazzmaster make a lot more sense if they are being applied to music they were designed for.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
if you think of like a world of jazz and instrumental music, and you
Yeah.
put really big strings on, like you have no intention of bending them, and the guitar starts to come alive in a way that's way more inspiring.
Right. Right.
But what I like to do with it, I like jazz masters for more like chord and instrumental, like melodic type things. And of course you can do the Elvis Costello watching the detectives thing. And then but Jaguars are special because I like to abuse them by getting a really trebly sound, and it's the only guitar that you can plug right into a Fender amp and sound like Morris Tepper and Gary Lucas on the Beefheart records.
Yeah.
Like you can dial in these horrendously aggressively bright sounds.
Yeah.
And do that, and it's just so brutally terrible. But those are some of my favorite sounds. They're just unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I knew it was good when he brought it over. I was just like, I don't deserve this, but I'm not going to say no.
I have to say one more thing before we have to go.
Yeah.
I was familiar, and I hope it's okay, Erin. Ryan and I both talk a lot, and
I'm used to it. It's all good. I'm the quiet observer, but
as long as you're happy, I don't want you elbowed out.
This has been a great conversation. Yeah.
So
good.
I know the music through Beauty Pill and a little bit Soccer Team, but not enough to be intelligent about it. I only discovered your visual art stuff 15 minutes before we started speaking. But it's some of my favorite type of artwork, and I wanted to compliment you on it. I love heavy lines, heavy drawn lines. I'm insanely excited about lines.
Thank you.
And it made me, I'm going to say a lot of people who know Pettibone probably say it's a lot like Pettibone, but I want to say that it's more for me that you and Pettibone are scratching the same itch for me, more so than it's actually too much of Pettibone.
He didn't know Pettibone stuff. First time somebody made the comparison for him, he had never, he'd never seen the cover of Goo, he didn't know.
So like, here's the thing. I knew Black Flag had comic style record covers, but I didn't own any Black Flag records. Do you know what I mean?
Of course.
And I wasn't a Black Flag devotee or anything like that. I got into that style from Roy Lichtenstein.
Well, can I say, I don't mean to interrupt you again, but I have to say this before you say it and rob me of the chance to know something. So, I'll tell you what I thought of immediately was the very early Warhol stuff when he was drawing advertisements or his sketches. Have you seen that stuff at all?
Yeah.
Because I love Warhol before the print. I love the printmaking too, but I love him before the printmaking.
Yeah.
And with it'll be hard lines with a rich splash of color that maybe even drips a little. I see that and I could just swoon. I love that.
So like my influence was from fine art, because I used to go like to National Gallery of Art all the time. And when I was a kid reading comics, I read the dailies, and I was really into the daily comics. Like Burke Breathed, who did Bloom County, and things like that. But I didn't, Bill Watterson, of course, but like, I was really into the daily comics, but like reading comic books with superheroes, that was kind of frowned upon. You got made fun of if you were a comic book person, like when we were kids. So in high school, I started reading comics late. I started reading them in high school, and I was kind of in the closet about about reading comics, and I I was just like, in my mind, I was buying them because I liked Roy Lichtenstein so much.
Right.
I was like, I was really into like single panels and how wonderful the composition was in the single panels and how rich the lines were and all that kind of stuff. And so I was really like buying them, trying to copy those drawings, trying to get that vibe from like anything, but it could have been any artist. I was just like looking at like individual panels. And then I ended up, of course, reading comics and then really being into reading them and really getting into the writers. And like after a while, like I just became a comic nerd. And that evolved into loving Jaime Hernandez from Love and Rockets, and the sort of like the black and white underground comics. Do you know what I mean? So even though I was in the punk scene and I had seen Pettibone, I wasn't like worshiping at the altar of Pettibone. Do you know what I mean? But when I started doing flyers, which was, most people know me for the flyers. When I started doing flyers, everyone made Pettibone comparisons, but not only that, everyone started gifting me Pettibone collections and books and original Black Flag flyers. People started giving me this stuff, and I became the human bank of Pettibone material because people just kept getting like, you got to know this, and they'd give me something else, so I actually have a lot of, and I think Pettibone's amazing. But
I love Pettibone.
But
I associate it very much with records, though.
Yeah.
For example, the difference is if I saw something, when I look at Pettibone's artwork, I still associate it with the rock and roll thing. It looks like it was made and then a band is going to buy it and use it for an album cover or something. And when I look at, I'll tell you my favorite one of yours real fast. The Mickey Mouse on the Superman.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I know it's dumb, but I love that. I love that.
You're the only person in my entire life who has even mentioned that one.
It's such a good one.
I thought, like, I was trying to do at that time really loose drawings that captured Americana.
Yeah.
And I thought Mickey Mouse riding on Superman, I thought that was hilarious. I thought it was like comic gold, and like no one has said a single word to me about that ever.
Those people don't get it.
I just thought it was like this quintessential, like look at this life that we have. Like, look,
it's so perfect.
Cultural icons. The way that he's like gripping his cape with his gloves.
You know what I love about Ryan's art is that it's so like, it has made some very clear, like they're very clear stages of your artwork, you know, through the years, like from the zines to the flyers, which is massive, right? Like if you were to go, I'm gonna brag, like, but if you were to go to like, if you Google like Dischord fans, like the hordes of flyers and stuff that would show up that Ryan has done.
Yeah.
People around the world just are like saving these flyers that he's made. People have tattoos of his.
I believe that.
It's like bonkers. But
I don't have them all.
Yeah.
I don't have all the flyers.
And
but you've got Pettibone's flyers.
I have all of his.
But even though they're very like, it's changed throughout the decades, and you know, it's very, very clear. You could see something that Ryan did from 25 years ago, and you still know, and only be familiar with what he's done in the past 5 years.
Yeah.
Still know it was his. It's just in his actual hand. Like, it's like, I think it's incredible.
Well, you know what's going to happen is one day you're going to go to Raymond Pettibone's house, and everyone has brought all of your flyers to Raymond Pettibone.
Wouldn't it be amazing? That would be so
That'd be
great.
good. That'd be really good. Like some weird karma.
It would be awesome.
Something the universe would write itself.
Yeah. Someday your estates are just going to trade.
Yeah, that's really good. No, but somebody posted something the other day on Facebook, like a collection of flyers from a joke band that I was in, and he posted this flyer that we did, and I definitely do not have that flyer. I definitely do not remember making the flyer. I definitely made that flyer. Do you know what I mean? And when the pic, and then I get this weird like pinch of like, I never thought it'd be one of these guys who doesn't have all of his art. You know what I mean? But
Oh, right.
like I have no idea. Like I've done, I mean, I'm saying like a braggart. I'm saying like I've done so many flyers and posters at this point. Like I don't even, I wouldn't even, I've been talking to a guy about assembling a book, and the thought of getting it all together is so overwhelming. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like a weight. It's like, it's kind of heartbreaking, you know, but I still plan on doing it, but it's just like, there's a lot floating around out there.
Yeah.
But I will say this though, I thought like, I'm not, like my MO was always to start something and finish it. And I am proud of the fact that like, I can look behind me and see a wake of projects that are completed, that are actually done. And whether it's a flyer or a poster or a record or whatever, like that's, you know, that's the thing I'm most proud of, is that these are things that I finished, and they exist in the world. Do you know what I mean?
I do, and I envy you that. I'm the guy who has. No, I do. I have had all these really interesting musical ideas, but it's taken me a very long time to formulate. Kind of like, this sounds so hokey, and it's like, you know, I hate talking about being a creator or something. It's so weird, but I do kind of feel like one sometimes, and I feel like I'm just formulating how I want to be with that. And I just put my first, I've had bands, you know, rock bands, but it never really felt like it was totally me. I like all these different things, you know, and I only now feel like I'm good enough to put it together. And I put a trio together, and we were doing kind of like the first, what I feel like is the first effort in that direction. And this freaking pandemic just shut us down. And it was what I was saying before, where they were like, you know, the other guys were like, well, we'll have to figure out a way. Maybe we can bounce things back and forth. And I'm like, that is not what I'm never doing that again. Like,
I mean, I always record anyway. So like, I'm more into doing it because I'm not romanticizing it at all. I do not like it. Do you know what I mean? Like I'd rather be in a room with people kind of vibing out on stuff. But since I record on my own anyway, do you know what I mean? And if I laid down a drum track and send it to somebody, or somebody sends me, like Darren and Continuals will send me a drum track, and then to kind of jam on what he does, it's like I started imagining like, well, what if I had played this, and this is just on, these are the tracks anyway. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm not telling you to let it go at all, because I'm saying I get it, but it's like you know, like I'm just always tinkering with shit too. Plus, I don't know how long this is going to happen. I don't know how long we're going to be on lockdown.
well, no, I hear you. Here's the thing, and I had this conversation with someone else. I understand why most people are cool to bounce tracks and lay things down that way. It's a very different type of work. It's the thing that I'm chasing has to do with interplay.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to, because I found a bassist and drummer that I can be with, where we can have that kind of level of communication and have it work seamlessly into what feels like a composition.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the whole shooting match for me. So it's almost like, and I'm not saying this like, oh, I can't do it or I couldn't. It's just not the thing I want to do.
Yeah.
You know, I want to, it's like if somebody said, hey man, nobody's going to be painting for a while, but don't worry, there's a pottery wheel in the back. You know, it's like, I don't do that, you know?
That's really good. That's really good. All right. I wanted to say one more thing though about the wake of projects being done.
Okay.
I wanted to say, as far as finishing stuff, that is a lesson that I learned while working at Dischord. Everybody I worked with at Dischord got things done, and to be in that environment, at some point, I I consciously looked at people around me, especially, I'll just be straight up, especially Cynthia Connolly. That is a person who starts things and sees things through all the way to the end, and she never delays in starting. And as soon as she has the idea, she starts right away, and she sees it all the way through to the end. And working with her every day, I told myself, I willed myself, like, I'm going to finish stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, she was like a kind of a mad, inspiring force in my life.
But that label,
everyone at the label was like that.
would not, that label itself would not exist if they didn't fucking follow through with the project, right? Like, that is the only way, and that's why it has become they set that bar, you know, for the do it yourself. That's like, when I was there, you have an idea, see it through. Do the work, get it done.
There was a work ethic. There was a work ethic.
And you worked with Jeff, so
amazing.
you know it's the same.
Yeah, Jeff did some projects that were like, Jeff worked on stuff kind of tirelessly, for sure. You know that, like, where he would bring in too many options or do something for a really long time. But like, Jeff built our office, and then he built it again. And then
Jeff is not a human. He's a force. Yeah,
and then like, when you go over to the Dischord house, you'll see things that Jeff built inside the house.
Oh yes.
Like, it's just like,
oh yeah, you should see the stuff he's built inside of the mansion, and it'll be like,
we saw what he was starting.
Yeah,
we saw some scaffolding.
Last time we were over there, there was some tearing down of some stuff to create newness.
He had a lot going on.
Yeah.
Last time I was over there, he showed me, you know, oh, this is my office that I was putting together, and it's if a space to work in can be in and of itself a great work of art, of efficiency and movement, but also color. Like, it's just like, look at these perfect shelves, and it's the exact shade of green that will make you want to live inside of it. You know, it's just like, what?
Yeah, very familiar with it. That's what he did at the office. We had to pack records on this long table at the Dischord office, and that thing is the sturdiest thing like ever. Like, you could, you know what I mean? Like, an elephant could sit on that thing, and it's not going to budge. And
you don't have to tell me, man. I soundproofed our practice space with Jeff, and it involved huge pieces of iron, swinging doors with multiple layers of drywall and stuff in between the drywall and the thing, and no, scrap it, we're starting over, like that kind of a thing. And it worked.
It's crazy.
Those are some of the best years of my life with Jeff. And now he lives I live not far from him, and I've been an ass hermit friend. Like, we just, sometimes it's a lot, you know.
Yeah.
He's someone I love with all my heart, and it's a lot of, there's a lot of humanity, because I also have kind of I have a neurotic personality, and we get together, and it's almost like I don't want to fully go in and have something begin, because it could go on and on.
Yeah, Jeff was really, really good to me, though. I quit Dischord a couple of times, and not because of a fight, but because life was taking me elsewhere. And Jeff wrote me letters, and just like when Erin and I had kids, he wrote us a letter with a decorative card with our sons' names on them.
Oh yeah, and he would spend a whole day making a card.
Yeah,
for sure.
He was like, you know, he's very, very, very good to me. He's him and Ian were just amazing bosses to have.
I can't even begin to tell you how good Jeff is to me.
Yeah.
I will say this though, and then we should probably wrap up somewhere.
Okay.
There was a moment, and I don't even mean it to be like a big dramatic thing, but everybody has these moments, and Jeff was there for one of mine. So I had a moment where I had some bad stuff go down, not my fault. You know, certainly my fault, but some stuff went down. And I was like at the end of life's rope. You know, I was done ski. And he knew that. And he showed up with one of those Jeep Wagoneers. And he said, get your stuff. And he started throwing my stuff in the Wagoneer, took me to his house, set me up in a room. He says, you're going to be here a while. That's who Jeff is to me.
Yep.
Yeah. That's true. That's true blue. That's really good.
Yeah.
Really good. I love that.
On a funny note, there was recently a review of the Beauty Pill EP, came out a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
And they said, Erin Nelson, married to former Beauty Pill drummer Jeff Nelson. I very quickly texted Chad and was like, I love Jeff. This has to be changed. Like it was print, it was on the internet. And so I think within 24 hours it was changed. But like, it was really funny because
she was married to Jeff for 24 hours.
Yeah. Love you, Jeff. But it was funny, like somebody evidently, just did a quick Google of Nelson and they came up with Dischord, and they put the Jeff, they obviously didn't know the history of Beauty Pill, but funny.
It's funny.
Funny aside.
It's good.
Dude, that record that we made in the mansion is called Adventures in Contentment. And it's basically it's a bunch of songs I wrote that are kind of like, oh, my girl doesn't love me kind of thing. But maybe well crafted, but it was just pretty much that. And it was really a trip to show up on the little bit of live playing that we even did in like Morgantown, West Virginia, and have the flyers that we sent with a extra, like a piece of tape over them, and it says Jeff Nelson of Minor Threat. And the crowd that would show up to hear my sad love song.
Yeah,
sure.
They were not.
It's it could have been, it could have been bad if it was still the era of the skinhead, man. Y'all would have been dead.
True.
Oh, good Lord.
It's terrible.
Scary. Well, I guess now we should all just be mature and go to bed.
Yeah. I have to shower. I smell terrible. I feel bad for Erin. She's been inching away from me because I smell so bad.
Dude, my
pandemic. It's like all excusable.
Yeah, we shower less and less every day.
So my parents have a farm, and I haven't seen them in months, but today was the day we decided it was finally safe for me to go over there.
Yeah.
And I wanted to help them with the farm, so we were doing some work. I had become such a slob, apparently, through this shelter in place period. I had to take a shower to go to the farm to work. That's how bad.
Yeah. So, I think that's where I am right now. Anyway, it's great to talk to you.
Yeah.
I know, this was really fun. And I want to, I don't know, hopefully there will come a time in the future times where we can hang out in person. And
sure.
By the way, if your turntable has one of those speed adjusters, does it?
No, we don't have. That's when we get some money. That's where we're going with it. But we don't have one.
Well, someday, remember this. Put on that Black Dots record.
Yeah.
And run the speed a little slow.
All right.
It's a whole other record.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's like takes it from that really amped up. It's just more like a Sabbath record.
Yeah. There's a couple of people I know that have gone down a rabbit hole of listening to records they're very familiar with on alternate speeds.
Yeah.
It's like, no, man, I'm here now. I live here.
Yeah. That's the only record. I won't do that with anything else.
It's really funny.
Cool.
All right, you too.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah, stay in touch, Tony. If we come up, we're planning a trip to Kalamazoo when things are safe.
Nice.
And then we'll
pass through.
We'll come up. We always try to see Jeff on the way up or on the way back. You know what I mean? So if you're around, maybe we can all eat some pizza.
Yeah. I don't know if I'll eat pizza, but I'll eat something near you while you eat pizza.
All right.
Sounds good.
I just tossed that out there. It doesn't have to be pizza, I swear. I swear to you.
You just don't know this about me. I'm like, I have all kinds of food anxiety.
You can eat a singular bean or whatever it is on a plate that you're going to have.
I have one bean, and yeah. I'll sit there and slice it during dinner.
Like a cartoon.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll log out. I don't know how to do this.
It's okay. I'll stop recording and everything will vanish.
All right. All right. I'll see you, Tony. Take care.
Take care, friends.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.